In September 2014, a small group of hunters ventured deep into a remote and heavily wooded area of rural Tennessee. They were familiar with the terrain, having explored similar stretches before, but nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to find. As they carefully navigated through thick underbrush and towering trees, one of the hunters spotted something unusual. Partially hidden in a dense thicket, concealed beneath layers of leaves and branches, was a large, out-of-place bucket. When one of the men peered inside, he was instantly overcome with a sense of dread. Recognizing the seriousness of the discovery, the hunters quickly contacted local authorities. Law enforcement responded without delay, securing the scene and beginning a methodical investigation. After a thorough examination, the remains were positively identified as belonging to Holly Bobo, a 20-year-old nursing student who had been reported missing in April 2011. Holly Lynn Bobo was born on October 12, 1990, in the quiet and rural community of Darden, Tennessee. After finishing high school, she enrolled at the University of Tennessee at Martin's Parsons Center, located just a short drive from home, where she pursued her dream of becoming a nurse. By 2011, Holly was 20 years old and living a life that seemed to be on a clear and promising path. She was dedicated to her studies and managed to balance school with her personal life. She also had a long-term boyfriend, someone she had been dating since high school. The two shared a strong bond and were actively planning a future together, discussing careers, family, and everything in between. Holly's life, though filled with the usual stress of classes and clinicals, was marked by purpose and hope. On the morning of April 13, 2011, Holly woke up around 4:30 a.m. She began her morning routine while the rest of her family was still asleep. Her parents left for work a few hours later, and her brother, Clint, remained in bed, unaware that anything was amiss. Around 7:30 a.m., Holly received a phone call from her boyfriend. He let her know that he was planning to go hunting that morning on a piece of property owned by Holly's grandmother, and wanted to make sure it was okay with her family. The two chatted for several minutes. Holly sounded normal, calm, focused, and in good spirits. She mentioned that she would be leaving for university shortly. Shortly after that call, a neighbor who lived close to the Bobo residence stepped outside to leave for work. As he approached his car, he was startled by a loud, chilling scream. It came from the direction of the Bobo home. It wasn't just a raised voice, it was a scream of distress that instantly raised alarm. The neighbor quickly went back inside to alert his mother, who then called Holly's mother at work to share what they had just heard. Concerned and alarmed, Holly's mother immediately tried to call her daughter's phone, but Holly didn't answer. At the same time, inside the house, Holly's brother Clint was just waking up. He hadn't heard the scream, but he did notice that their dog, who was outside in the backyard, had suddenly started barking furiously. Curious and slightly concerned, Clint went to the window and looked out toward the garage. There, he saw something that didn't immediately register as alarming, but would soon become the center of a harrowing investigation. Standing in the garage was Holly. Beside her stood a man dressed in full camouflage. From Clint's vantage point, it was difficult to see clearly, but he initially assumed the man was Holly's boyfriend, given the hunting plans he had just discussed with her. The camouflage attire made sense, and it wouldn't have been unusual to see him at the house. However, something about Holly's body language didn't sit right. She seemed tense. Her tone, though muffled, didn't sound like someone casually chatting with someone she knew well. Moments later, Clint looked back out and saw Holly walking toward the wooded area behind their property. She was accompanied by the same man in camouflage, who was now holding her by the hand. This time, Clint noticed something that shook him. The man was considerably taller and broader than Holly's boyfriend, and while he still couldn't see the man's face, partly due to a cap he was wearing, he did spot another detail. The man had long dark hair that reached the middle of his back. It was now clear that this was not who he had assumed it to be. Still unsure of what he had just witnessed, Clint tried to call Holly's phone. She didn't answer. He then tried her boyfriend's number, but he too didn't pick up. As concern deepened, their mother, still on her way back home, called the police. But since she worked in a neighboring county, the emergency call was routed to a different jurisdiction, which delayed the local response. Back at the house, once Clint realized that Holly had vanished into the woods with a stranger, he grabbed a firearm for protection and went outside. But Holly was already gone. What he did find, however, was even more alarming. He immediately called the local authorities, who arrived within minutes. Despite the urgency of the situation, the local police response was hesitant and disorganized. The officers on the scene had little experience with serious investigations of this nature. They failed to immediately secure the area, did not preserve the crime scene, and didn't begin a thorough search of the woods. Shockingly, they also did not canvass the neighborhood for potential witnesses during those critical early hours. This initial misstep would prove costly in the days and weeks that followed. Police brought in forensic teams to examine the garage, and they confirmed that the blood belonged to Holly. Investigators also verified that her boyfriend had no involvement in the incident. He had been hunting in a different location at the time and didn't match the physical description provided by Clint. The search intensified in the days that followed. Using cell phone data, investigators tracked the final movements of Holly's phone. The GPS indicated that the phone had traveled north for approximately 30 minutes before reversing direction. The final signal came from a wooded area less than a mile from the Bobo home. A search team was sent to that location, where they discovered Holly's phone with the SIM card removed, but once again there was no sign of Holly herself. Over the following days, a deeply unsettling trend began to emerge. Personal items belonging to Holly started appearing in random places around town. Her lunch container was found on a roadside. Later, someone came across a store receipt with her name on it. A school identification card turned up next. These discoveries were as disturbing as they were mysterious. They painted a picture of someone trying to discard or scatter evidence, but gave no clear clue as to where Holly was or what had happened to her. With limited leads, authorities began looking into individuals in the area with criminal backgrounds. Attention soon turned to a man named Terry, who had a long history of violent behavior. His past offenses included multiple assault charges, and several of his victims were women who bore a strong resemblance to Holly. Terry also matched the height and build of the man seen leading Holly into the woods. Investigators began surveillance, tapped his phone, and eventually obtained a warrant to search his property. But none of this produced any solid evidence linking him to Holly's disappearance. Despite these efforts, Holly's case remained unsolved. The search area was expanded, additional suspects were considered, and various tips were followed. But months went by with no significant developments. Eventually, the official ground search was called off, and the focus shifted entirely to investigative work. Holly's family never gave up hope, but the trail was growing cold. Then, nearly 3 years later, in March of 2014, a major break in the case occurred, an unexpected development that would finally bring answers to a mystery that had haunted an entire community for far too long. As the investigation into Holly Bobo's mysterious disappearance stalled, a surprising breakthrough came from an unlikely source, someone already in trouble with the law. Authorities arrested a local man named Dylan, who was no stranger to law enforcement. Known for previous run-ins with the police, particularly related to substance use and illegal possession of firearms, Dylan was brought in on unrelated charges involving unlawful weapon ownership. During questioning, however, the case took an unexpected and deeply unsettling turn. While in custody, Dylan made a startling and unprompted claim. He told detectives that on the day Holly went missing, he had actually seen her. According to his statement, he had gone to his brother Zach's house that morning to retrieve a car. When he walked inside the living room, he said, he was confronted with a scene that instantly alarmed him. Inside the house were his brother Zach, their mutual acquaintance Jason, and, to Dylan's shock, Holly herself. He described Holly as sitting silently in a chair, her body language conveying fear and helplessness. Dylan insisted she appeared deeply distressed and clearly out of place. He then claimed that Zach admitted to him in front of Jason that he had taken Holly against her will. Dylan went further, saying Zach told him that he had harmed Holly and had even recorded part of the ordeal on video. Dylan was adamant that he had not been involved in anything beyond that moment. He claimed he left shortly after and played no part in what happened afterward. According to Dylan, Holly was no longer alive by the time he left the house. He also noted that Zach had been wearing camouflage that day, which eerily matched the description Holly's brother had given of the man seen leading her into the woods. Dylan's claims prompted a new wave of action from law enforcement. Investigators quickly brought both Zach and Jason in for questioning. The two men, however, denied all allegations. They told detectives they had nothing to do with Holly's disappearance and dismissed Dylan's account as entirely false. Officers also obtained search warrants for both of their homes, looking for any trace of Holly or evidence related to the disturbing story Dylan had shared, including the alleged video. Despite a thorough search, nothing of evidentiary value was found. Just as it seemed the case might hit another dead end, investigators received a second tip, this time from a woman who had once lived with a man named Jeffrey. She reached out to the police with a disturbing claim of her own. According to her, during their time living together, Jeffrey once showed her a short video clip. When she asked about it, Jeffrey allegedly told her that the woman in the video was Holly and the man was Zach. More disturbingly, she said Jeffrey told her that his own brother, Mark, was the one who had filmed the video. Taking the claims seriously, investigators interviewed the woman in person and asked if she would be willing to help confirm the story. She agreed to place a recorded call to Jeffrey, during which she would casually bring up the incident. During the call, she mentioned the video, and Jeffrey's responses caught the detective's attention. Though vague, his words seemed to validate her story. He didn't deny the video's existence and didn't question what she was referring to. Detectives believed this was enough to bring both Jeffrey and his brother Mark in for formal questioning. When questioned, however, both men flatly denied having any knowledge about Holly's case. They claimed they had never seen a video and knew nothing about any involvement by Zach. When confronted with the audio recording of Jeffrey's phone call, he quickly backtracked and said he had misunderstood the woman's question during the call, implying that he thought she was referencing something else entirely. Despite the suspicious nature of the call and the woman's detailed account, detectives were once again faced with a lack of concrete evidence. A full search of both brothers' homes was conducted, including digital forensics on their devices. But the investigators came up empty-handed. With no physical evidence and only one witness statement, the authorities were legally obligated to release both men. The case once again reached a frustrating standstill. Detectives remained determined to explore every possible link between Zach and the others mentioned. Eventually, this persistence led them to another individual, a man named Shane. Records revealed that Shane had been in contact with Zach on the same day Holly vanished. Investigators suspected he may have played a role in helping Zach after the crime, possibly even in covering it up or disposing of evidence. Shane was brought in for questioning. During the interrogation, detectives pushed hard, laying out what they believed had happened. They suggested that Zach may have asked Shane to help hide evidence, and possibly even Holly. To their surprise, Shane didn't deny it. Instead, he made an admission that jolted the room. He claimed he knew the location where Holly had been left. Detectives, realizing the gravity of this statement, offered Shane full immunity in exchange for cooperation. If he led them to Holly and testified against those involved, they agreed not to charge him. Shane accepted the deal. However, when it came time to lead authorities to the location, he failed to produce any results. Whether due to fear, a lapse in memory, or something else entirely, Shane was unable to take investigators to the site he had mentioned. With the deal now broken, the immunity offer was revoked, and detectives began exploring new strategies to build a solid case against the circle of suspects. Then, several months later, a major development changed everything. In September 2014, nearly 3.5 years after Holly had vanished, a group of men were out hunting in a wooded area approximately 19 miles from her family's home. While trekking through dense brush, one of the hunters noticed something unusual. It was a large, overturned plastic bucket, partially buried under branches and leaves. Curious, he lifted it, and what he found inside would finally provide the evidence authorities had been searching for. Inside the container was a human skull. The man immediately called law enforcement, and soon, forensic teams arrived to begin a careful recovery operation. Over the course of several hours, partial skeletal remains were collected from the area and sent to a forensic laboratory for identification. Given the location and the proximity to Holly's home, authorities feared what they already suspected. Within days, dental records confirmed it: the Eitzby Lynn Bobo. The discovery was heartbreaking, but it also gave investigators something they had never had before: proof that a crime had been committed. Despite the condition of the evidence, which had been exposed to the elements for over 3 years, forensic examiners made a critical finding. A small bullet hole in the skull confirmed that Holly had died from a gunshot wound. Her death was now officially classified as a homicide, and the case transitioned from a missing person investigation to a murder inquiry. Armed with this new evidence, detectives refocused their investigation on the 4 individuals who had repeatedly been mentioned throughout the case: Zach, his brother Dylan, their friend Jason, and the associate Shane. The strategy now was to pressure someone into talking, someone who might have been present during or after the crime, but wasn't the one who pulled the trigger. Their focus narrowed to Jason. He was brought in again, and this time, presented with the possibility of facing life in prison. Faced with the reality of the charges and the mounting evidence, Jason decided to cooperate. He agreed to tell the police everything he knew in exchange for leniency. According to Jason's testimony, on the morning of Holly's disappearance, he had gone to Zach's house to buy drugs. When he arrived, he found Zach, Dylan, and Shane already there. Jason said that Zach admitted to taking Holly and claimed that she was no longer alive. He alleged that Holly's body was in the trunk of Zach's car, wrapped in a blanket. Jason said Zach asked for his help in getting rid of the evidence. As Shane burned Holly's belongings in a barrel nearby, Zach and Jason got into the vehicle and drove toward the Tennessee River Bridge. The plan, according to Jason, was to dispose of the body in the river. But when they opened the trunk to move her, Zach realized something chilling: Holly was still alive. In a panic, fearing that she might call for help or escape, Zach retrieved a firearm and ended her life right there. Worried that the gunshot might attract unwanted attention, Zach changed his plan. Instead of proceeding to the river, he put Holly's body back into the vehicle and drove off, dropping Jason off along the way. Later, Zach contacted Jason and told him he had found a different location in the woods to hide the body exactly where it was discovered years later. Jason's confession helped confirm the horrifying truth, but investigators knew they still needed more to fully prosecute the case. The search for evidence continued, but now, they finally had the victim, the cause of death, and the testimony to begin holding people accountable. Jason's account of what took place on the day Holly Bobo disappeared offered investigators a new perspective on the sequence of events, but it also introduced several puzzling inconsistencies. According to his statement, the events that led to the crime started not with a plan to target Holly, but rather with a plan involving her brother. Jason alleged that Zach, his brother Dylan, and their associate Shane had gone to Holly's house with the original intent of meeting her brother. Their purpose, he claimed, was to teach him how to manufacture illegal substances. Jason said the group believed Holly's brother would be interested in this activity and might even help distribute the substances afterward. But, according to Jason, when the 3 men arrived, Holly unexpectedly confronted them. She had allegedly overheard part of their conversation and quickly realized what they were planning. Jason claimed Holly became furious and ordered the men to leave her property immediately, warning them that she might report what she had heard to the authorities. Fearing that she would expose them, Jason said the trio made a hasty and devastating decision to abduct her and ensure she would stay quiet. This version of events, while shocking, did not align with everything investigators already knew. For one, Clint Bobo, Holly's brother, vehemently denied ever having any interest or involvement in making illegal substances. He told police that he had never spoken to any of the suspects about such matters. His account of the morning in question also conflicted with Jason's story. When Clint awoke that day, he reported seeing only one person with his sister, not 3, and the man he observed didn't resemble Zach at all. The figure was taller, broader, and wore camouflage, but his build more closely resembled that of Shane. This raised more questions than answers. If all 3 suspects had supposedly been present, where were the other 2 during the moment Clint saw Holly being led into the woods? Jason continued his confession by describing what allegedly happened after the abduction. He claimed that Zach, Dylan, and Shane took Holly to an abandoned barn located on a property belonging to Shane's grandmother. It was there, Jason said, that she was held against her will. While the barn was later examined by police, they weren't able to recover definitive physical evidence tying it to the crime. However, the area surrounding the property did produce a few important clues. Notably, 2 items belonging to Holly. Her school identification card and her check were discovered just under 100 yards away from Shane's residence. This detail lent weight to Jason's version of events and suggested that the suspects may have passed through or stayed near the property shortly after Holly vanished. In parallel with Jason's statements, police had already gathered a growing collection of circumstantial evidence that further linked Zach and Dylan to the case. On the morning of Holly's disappearance, several neighbors independently reported seeing a white pickup truck speeding away from the Bobo home. This sighting was especially significant because Zach owned a truck that closely matched that description. Furthermore, surveillance footage from a camera placed along a nearby road captured a vehicle identical to Zach's driving in the vicinity at roughly the same time Holly was last seen. Witness testimony further strengthened the case. Zach's former girlfriend came forward and shared that during their relationship, Zach had made disturbing and threatening remarks. On at least one occasion, he allegedly warned her, "I'll tie you up like Holly, and no one will ever see you again." Several other individuals also told police that Zach had made indirect comments that hinted at his involvement in Holly's disappearance. While not a confession, these remarks painted a picture of someone who appeared to know far more than he let on. One of the most troubling pieces of information came from Dylan's own behavior after the crime. Investigators learned that Zach had allegedly threatened his brother, warning him that if he ever talked to the police or revealed any details, he would end up in the same hole next to her. This chilling statement suggested not only that Zach was capable of violence, but that he was willing to use threats to keep others silent. Another tip came from a local resident who had crossed paths with Zach and Shane shortly after Holly's death. According to this witness, the two men offered him a firearm in exchange for a quantity of illegal substances. He accepted the weapon and later disposed of it by throwing it into a nearby body of water. After hearing this, police launched a search of the area and managed to recover the weapon. Unfortunately, forensic testing revealed no usable fingerprints or DNA on the gun. As prosecutors began compiling their case and preparing for court, yet another unexpected twist struck the already complex investigation. Shane, the man who had previously told authorities he knew where Holly was buried, and who had once been offered immunity in exchange for cooperation, was found dead inside a hotel room. Authorities ruled the incident as self-inflicted, though the underlying reasons remained unclear. His death removed a potentially key witness from the proceedings and left prosecutors with one less person to testify. Each suspect was tried separately, beginning with Zach. His trial commenced in September 2017, more than 6 years after Holly's tragic disappearance. Though Zach pleaded not guilty to all charges, the evidence mounted against him. Jason, now a cooperating witness, took the stand and recounted everything he claimed to have seen and heard. His testimony, combined with witness statements, surveillance footage, and behavioral evidence, painted a damning picture. After several weeks of proceedings, the jury returned with a verdict. Zach was found guilty on multiple charges, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, and aggravated assault. The court sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, in addition to 2 additional 25-year sentences to be served consecutively. In January of the following year, Dylan, Zach's brother, went to trial. However, rather than fight the charges, Dylan chose to accept a plea deal. He admitted to assisting in the events that led to Holly's death, acknowledging his role in both the abduction and its aftermath. The deal did not require Dylan to testify against anyone else or provide further details, but the court handed down a 35-year sentence without the possibility of parole. Though his role had been somewhat less visible in the evidence, the length of the sentence reflected the severity of the crime. Jason, the third man implicated in the case, received a lighter sentence due to his cooperation with law enforcement. His willingness to testify and the detailed information he provided played a crucial role in securing Zach's conviction. In exchange for his assistance, Jason was sentenced to 8 years in prison, with the possibility of early release depending on his behavior and continued cooperation with prosecutors.